$120,000 for one Bitcoin. You've called for much higher in the past. It's still pretty surreal to see us hit that milestone over the weekend.
Oh, I think it's very exciting that people are starting to recognize the value of a better currency, a better store of value, a more honest currency, a currency that keeps perfect records. You know, there are quite a few examples of where what an old currency was overtaken by a new currency. My dad gave me $1 million bill, and I looked at it and I went, whoa, $1 million. I was about 10 years old. $1 million, what can I do with it? He said, nothing. And I said, what do you mean nothing? And he said, that's $1 million Confederate dollars. Confederates lost to the Union in the war, and there was huge inflation of a Confederate dollar. Nobody wanted any because they only found the value in the Union dollar. And so the Union dollar became the standard and the Confederate dollar became completely worthless. And I think that is where we're headed. I mean, the fiat money is becoming less and less relevant. Bitcoin and maybe some other cryptocurrencies are going to be the relevant ones in the future.
You said something recently which really caught my eye. And a lot of people talk about like Bitcoin hyper-Bitcoinization, and you said that you can see Bitcoin replacing the dollar, but you put a time frame on it. You said within the next decade, and you also mentioned like a fiat run where people lose confidence in the US dollar. And I was wondering, for you, what's the primary driver of that? Is it the strength of Bitcoin or is it the weakness of the dollar?
Over the last 7 years, a dollar has bought, I guess 7 years ago, it bought about 14,000 Satoshis. And today it buys about 800 Satoshis. Each year, the dollar, sure, it loses 5 or 10% to inflation, but against Bitcoin, it's losing about 50%. People are going to start recognizing that. They're going to say, well, wait a second. Why am I holding this currency that drops 50% a year against Bitcoin when I could be holding Bitcoin? And so retailers are going to start seeing that, and they're going to say, I accept Bitcoin. You know, after the retailers start getting more and more people paying Bitcoin, they're going to say, we only take Bitcoin. At that point, if retailers only take Bitcoin, then people are going to run to the banks and say, I need my dollars out because I need to buy my food, clothing, and shelter, and all my retailers only are taking Bitcoin. So I think that's a process that could happen. I mean, we're definitely moving in that direction. And right now, people aren't really spending their Bitcoin because they know it's just going up against the dollar. But I think retailers should accept it because they're going to want it too. And they're not going to want to spend it either. So I think it's all great technologies take a long time to penetrate society. It seems very fast, but Facebook is now 20 years old or something. Google is maybe 25, 27 years old, something like that. So it takes a long time for something to permeate society. And the more resistant and discussive, I guess, a topic is, the bigger it gets. I notice in a lot of social environments where I am, they're all talking about Bitcoin because it's me. But even if I just drop in on conversations, Bitcoin is like one of the top 3 conversations going on. I'd say it's like Trump, and then maybe what's happening in the world, and then Bitcoin. And so what that means is they're all still like, it's still somewhat controversial, which means that there's still a lot of room to run here. The day where everybody says, yeah, I've got Bitcoin and I don't really want dollars anymore, that will be the day Bitcoin sort of comes to an equilibrium. I think the dollar is going extinct. And just the way the Sony Betamax went extinct and the buggy whip manufacturer went extinct, and they all got replaced by better technology. The bow and arrow, they don't use that anymore. So I think you are just going through another anthropological leap forward. And so Bitcoin's going to be a major force there, and people say, what about all the other altcoins? And I think, they're great. They've got a lot of innovation, but Bitcoin 8 years ago was a 40% market share, and 4 years ago was a 50% market share, and today it's a 63% market share. There is a gravitational pull toward Bitcoin, and so that means all of the great engineers are porting whatever they invented on some other platform to Bitcoin. I think it does become at least one of the major currency of the world. And that amazing. And the world will be wealthier for it. It moves faster. It's much more flexible. It keeps perfect records. We don't need 80,000 tax people being hired because the taxes would be paid automatically. I'm hoping for a day where I can raise a fund all in Bitcoin, invest it all in Bitcoin, have my entrepreneurs pay their employees and suppliers all in Bitcoin and their taxes, and the whole thing being on a big smart contract. And if that happens, I will save a lot in friction. I won't need as much in the way of accounting, bookkeeping, auditing, legal, transfer agents. I mean, the fiat money is becoming less and less relevant. Bitcoin and maybe some other cryptocurrencies are going to be the relevant ones in the future. So, very exciting that it's being recognized. Larger institutions now are not only signing off, but making it a part of their strategy. I know banks are scrambling now to take custody of Bitcoin. I know many companies are trying what Michael Saylor did. That was brilliant, and it was a way people could invest in Bitcoin, but feel like they were still buying into a public stock. And now there are many, many of those that are going public doing the same kind of thing. And a lot of public companies are saying, hey, at least we need some Bitcoin in our treasury because the banks aren't a certainty anymore. And at most, we'll make Bitcoin our strategy, and we'll make Bitcoin our entire treasury, or a huge part of it. So many really interesting things are happening now. I kind of predicted optimistically that Bitcoin would hit 250,000 by 2022. But that was under an administration that was really blind to this new technology. And now we have an administration that is not just accepting, but encouraging Americans to innovate and to try this new technology. And that has really woken the place up. And so all these things that I thought were going to happen back in 2022 are happening now. So I think we'll eventually hit my number. I think the only reason anybody wants to hear my number is that I hit it right the first time in 2014 on a Fox Business, and Bitcoin was at $180. And I said that Bitcoin would hit 10,000 within 3 years. And the woman just rolled her eyes, thought, God, what is wrong? And in 2017, sure enough, it hit 10,000, right on the number. Then it dropped down to 4,000. They all asked me what my prediction was. And I guess I had hubris, or maybe I just didn't know what the previous administration was going to do. But now I think we've got a really proactive administration, and I think they are understanding that, going into the next century without Bitcoin is like maybe the French going to war with the British without gunpowder. Now we are in a it's like the unveiling, and people are going, oh my God, how have I been so blind for so long? Now I need to I really need to bear down and get involved. So that's very exciting. What are there, about 100 million Bitcoin holders? My guess is by the end of this year, there'll be 200 million.
Michael Saylor sort of pioneering this Bitcoin treasury approach. I'm not sure if Draper Associates still holds Bitcoin on their balance sheet. What have you made of this move in the industry and the amount of companies that are now putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet? To me, it kind of signals that people understand that Bitcoin is hard money and it is going to accrue and hold value over time. Is that your general view on that?
When the Silicon Valley Bank went out of business, I got about 15 calls from entrepreneurs saying, all our money is in Silicon Valley Bank and we can't get to it. And it's Thursday and payroll is Monday. And what are we going to do? Please bail us out, whatever. And so I made offers to bail a lot of them out, but U.S. government eventually did. I looked and I thought, wow. And they were talking about a domino effect where one bank goes out of business and then they all start going out of business, which was a real possibility and still is. And so I contacted many, I don't know if they were all of them, but I contacted many of our entrepreneurs and I said, you need to have a treasury operation now. And they're saying, God, we've only got $2 million in the bank. And I say, you need a treasury operation. You need to put some of it in a big bank. And they say, oh, okay. And then I say, you need to put some of it in a small bank. And they say, why? I said, because the U.S. government can bail out a small bank. And then you need to put some of it into Bitcoin. And they say, why? And I say, because there is that possibility that there is a bank crisis and that you need to be able to make 2-4 weeks of payroll no matter what. So I advised every one of our companies to do what Michael Saylor did, at least in some small way. So it turns out, I'm really heavy-handed telling them to do that. And then I looked at our own partnerships and I said, oh my God, this fund doesn't even have any Bitcoin in it. And I realized, okay, I'm going to call some money and just put it into Bitcoin. So I did. I've done it for every fund since. So
amazing.
I thought, God, how hypocritical of me. I'm telling everybody to buy Bitcoin in their treasury. I don't seem to have it on the fund's balance sheet. And because we call the money as we go, but I just made a call so that we could put some of it into Bitcoin. And that's been, of course, a good performer.
Yeah.
I mean,
to say the least.
The fund did very well, but Bitcoin's done very well too.
One more question in a sort of different direction. I'd say we're all Bitcoiners on this call. That's pretty evident. And we've talked about the sort of trajectory it's on. Whether it replaces the dollar. You've obviously put the 250K price tag on it a long time ago, which now, we're nearly at the halfway point. So that seems more than plausible, even to skeptics. What do you think represents the biggest threat for Bitcoin right now?
Well, there are always threats to everything. I'll tell you what I don't think are major threats. One is the energy use. I think, first of all, you'll be using less energy over time as you move toward smaller and smaller devices and lower voltages. And the energy that has been built for Bitcoin has been new energy generally, and that new energy has just brought more energy to our planet. And I think if people have a use for energy, if they feel there is value, they will use the energy. So they feel there's value in Bitcoin, so they're using the energy for Bitcoin. Those miners who, struggled through all the bear markets now are starting to feel pretty good about themselves, I think. The other thing that people talk about that they think is a threat is quantum computing. And it turns out that Antminer creates new computers all the time. And so do the hackers. They use new computers all the time. But the first uses are always for mining. And if the first uses of a new computer are for mining, then the Bitcoin blockchain is going to be more secure. And so you don't see, and a giant hack of Bitcoin is in no one's interest, because if you could take all the Bitcoin is suddenly worth nothing because nobody wants it. The beauty of Bitcoin is the network. As more people accept it, there is more value to it. And it goes up exponentially, which, it's that n squared thing. If there's just one of me, Bitcoin's worth 0. If there are 2 of us, it's worth 1. If there are 3 of us, it's worth 3. If there are 4 of us, it's worth 6. If it's 5, it's worth 10. And it goes up exponentially. So there is a major effect. When there was a threat that China, but it was a bunch of different people in China, but that China had more than 40% of the Bitcoin mining at one point. People said, oh, what if it's over 50%? Well, they don't have an incentive to do anything if they're over 50%, because the beauty of being a miner is that you are incentivized to keep the blockchain secure. So I think that that is no longer an issue. The other issue that people talk about is regulatory. And yeah, that can swing back and forth. But now politicians do it at their own peril. About 30% of the money going into politics now is coming from crypto. And that's pretty much the difference between winning and losing as a politician. And so I'm pretty sure there's a scramble now for both parties to realize, to say, it's been, the Republicans won pretty big because they accepted Bitcoin and the Democrats did not. And they were the counterpoint, I think. So I think in the U.S., the regulatory issue will probably be in the favor of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. And outside the U.S., it's always been more lenient. People have all been able to do all these things that we haven't been able to do in the U.S. So unless they have a major reversal outside the U.S., I don't think we have too big an issue there. When a country goes against and tries to overregulate something like a Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, they do it at their own peril. They lose all their innovation. They lose all a bunch of their wealthiest people who bring a bunch of jobs with them. So I don't see that as a possibility, a near-term problem, because I think countries are smarter than that. And so I think that the major threats are probably innovators who come with something new. And normally technologies, businesses, whatever, have kind of a 20 to 40 year run before the new technology comes up, because they're still innovating early on, and they're still providing good service to their customers. And then longer term, they're not. You could argue that there hasn't been much innovation happening in Apple Computer for a while, maybe since the EarPods. And in the phone, there really hasn't been anything since, there's not much difference between an iPhone 4 and an iPhone 15. So they're at the point where a new innovator might be able to challenge them, because then, and when a company becomes a monopoly or part of an oligopoly, they stop loving their customer and they start providing worse service at a high cost. And so who are those now? It's like big pharma provides bad service at a high cost. Big government, bad service at a high cost. Big insurance, low service, high cost. All the accounting, that's a nightmare with FASB and all that stuff. And I think the blockchain is going to completely change that industry. What are the other ones? Banking, Bitcoin's challenging the banking system too. Anyway, all these things that advertise on TV are usually, monopolies or oligopolies, and they're starting to provide bad service at a high cost. And they're good places for me to be investing in challengers who are taking new technologies like AI and Bitcoin and moving them into other industries. So, yes, long answer to a short question.
As a VC, have you put any money in any specific Bitcoin scaling, Lightning, and these kind of things, and move to that so that we can get to the point where Bitcoin is both a fantastic store of value and a medium of exchange?
Yeah, we invested in OpenNode, and OpenNode is a really easy way to accept Bitcoin as a retailer. We use it for tuition for Draper University, and we use it for rent, and we accept it for We have a little retail store there. We accept it there, and they make it very easy. There are some really easy ways to move money around. I mean, once you have a Coinbase account, it's pretty easy to move it around. It's not too hard to move it around on Ledger. Things are hard until they're easy. So once you do it once, you say, oh, that was not that bad. And the next time's really easy. So I think that will happen with people. They'll just get better at it. And I think at the same time, Coinbase and others are just going to make it easier to transfer money from one place to another. I mean, we constantly make new investments in entrepreneurs that are either porting smart contracts to Bitcoin or DeFi on Bitcoin or runes or ordinals or whatever. We're big believers. This is kind of one of my major themes as a venture capitalist. It's things around Bitcoin, moving medicine from chemo to bio being like stem cells and cloning and all of that. That seems to be taking over medicine, and that's exciting. That's as big a transformation as from the dollar to Bitcoin. And then in space, it's the sky is no longer the limit. It's like space goes on, and so many things are happening in space and in transportation, and a lot of those are now getting military support because they're dual use. So that's kind of another theme. And then AI as it applies to every industry and robotics, and how AI applies to robotics, and how robots get smarter, and eventually can do things that humans can only imagine doing today. We hit those themes. And then our biggest category and our most important category is other. We don't know what's coming. We don't profess to know what's coming. But every once in a while, we'll make an investment in something like Colossal, which is where they're bringing back the woolly mammoth, but they've already brought back the dire wolf, and they've got some giant bird. It looks like Big Bird that is maybe next on their list. They crossed a woolly mammoth with a mouse, and they've got a woolly mouse. That's one where it probably wasn't on our radar when we started the fund, but now it's an enormous success, or it seems to be, like, headed in that direction. Yeah, so we like to invest in entrepreneurs that are doing really extraordinary things, and I would someday just love to meet Satoshi, and maybe I have.
You probably have.
I do know.
Oh, that's the headline coming out of this interview now. That's the headline. Tim Draper has met Satoshi.
No, I didn't say that. Hey, watch yourself, buddy. I did not say that.
No. I think we all have a vested interest in keeping Satoshi very much incognito.